Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Gilly, writes comics, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate being on here. I'm also a geek, Geeky Gilly. Call me Gilly, writes comics as well. I happen to crowdfund my own comic book, so Space is a Place. I currently have something going on called Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, which is set in a galaxy far, far away, not Star Wars, but it's very good. Inspired by my love of TMNT, you could also say Saturday morning cartoons, and I'm just here to geek out with JR here.
So the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we found them. And actually one of the listeners of the show made the introduction and said, hey, you should have him on. And oh, by the way, he's got a crowdfunding campaign right now. And so since we like to support indie creators, we host a lot of Kickstarter episodes for you to find new content and for them to have a place to share their work. So it was a win-win. But before we dive in, sir, we do have to ask you the religion questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm as best as I'll ever be. Let's go for it, man. Just jump in.
So, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
I'm going to say this, man. My Star Wars fatigue is at an all-time high. I'm not where I'd love to be with Star Wars, but as far as religion is concerned, you could just say my faith is waning, but I'll be around. But I'm not as committed as I used to be. Yeah. So I'll just say Star Wars for now.
Star Wars was really good. They made 3 awesome movies. I wish they'd make more.
I wish they did, man. When Disney bought it up, I thought it was going to be amazing until I just saw what was coming out, and it's just more run of the mill, more just not what I expected from Star Wars, especially when you think of the expanded universe. I mean, even if you played video games, what was it, the Knights of the Old Republic? I mean, there were so many things that showed you the magic and brilliance of Star Wars and what it's capable of as far as storytelling, and I didn't get none of that. Disney maybe had The Mandalorian season 1 and 2 I thought were good, great, and then it just went downhill. And their Rogue One for me is the only Disney movie that I actually really enjoy. But I can't get behind the Disney trilogy. I can't. I'm sorry, guys. I try to have faith in Star Wars. I'm there. I need something to reel me back in. I don't know what that will be.
I liked Rebels. I watched that with the kid. I like the Clone Wars.
Oh, yes. Those are amazing. Rebels and Clone Wars, definitely watchable with the kids. They amplify the universe. You know, that's what you want. But I think what we need now, to be honest with you, if it's going to be something Star Wars, a new movie, I think we need something set way in the future, maybe 2,000 years in the future, and just see what Jedis and Sith are up to. But just the problem is that the Disney trilogy, it's like if you got something cool, right? Let's just say The Mandalorian season 1 and 2 was cool, right? At least for me, right? It's still connected to the train wreck that's the Disney trilogy. It's like in some way it's connected. And I don't want it to be. So it's a problem. And then I feel like they sully the originals. Like they sully. It's almost like they're trying to connect it. And I'm like, dang, I had this prestige when I thought of Star Wars. Now it's like it's slowly denigrating, and it shouldn't be that way. But yeah.
I liked the let's see, I read the Rogue Squadron growing up, the Clone Troopers. Like
hell yeah, those are great.
Those were like some of the best. And the Stormtrooper was almost a joke in the beginning. You have them showing they were showing Luke in their this tight shot cluster, and they're like, oh, those are 2 shot, that had to be a Stormtrooper, only they're that accurate. And then they spend the rest of the franchise where they couldn't hit anything. Go, and so the movies kind of made the Stormtroopers the butt of pop culture jokes. And then you read Clone Wars, and suddenly Rebel Commandos and all of that, and suddenly these guys are badasses.
Yeah, the Clone Wars were really bad. The soldiers, right? Like, I love how they're clones, but like each of them had like their own character, their own personality, their own even though they were clones, they weren't just carbon copies in terms of personality. They each had their differences and their strengths and weaknesses. And I think when you look at the Clone Wars TV show, like you said, the animated series, I love that dynamic of exploring through the Clone Wars. One of my favorite episodes was when they're with this general. It's a Jedi general, Pong Krell. I don't know if you remember him.
I do.
And I loved Pong Krell. His hubris, his presence, and the fact that the Clone Wars were able to take him down. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. That's the kind of thing that I love about Star Wars. When you can do that, and I believe that they restored at least some credibility, right, to maybe not the stormtroopers, but the clone troopers did prove their badassery. But it's those kind of stories that I love, where you just think these soldiers, where Pong Krell sees them as this worthless, just not on his level, and they somehow banded together and hunted him down and got him. It's like, it's one of my favorite arcs in that series, that episode.
So I like the Republic Commando that Karen Travis did. Like I said, I did love the Rogue Squadron. I loved some of the fan lore that came around Porkins on the Death Star run, to the point where Mikey Mason wrote a song about it for con circuits called "Too Fat to Troop." And
Nice.
so, like, I don't know, like there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Heck
The
yeah.
Galaxy of Fear series that John Whitman did in the 90s. Which it started with Eaten Alive, City of the Dead. I think Planet Plague was the next one. I can't remember the rest of them, but like Timothy Zahn did the choices. Of
yeah.
Like before he did the Thrawn trilogy, like he was just like there was just so much good there.
Exactly.
And then I don't know,
that expanded universe was treasure. And Disney, I mean, we're gonna start from the ground up. It's like, what? That'll be regarded as, what would they call it, as they had like
Legends.
Legends. There you go. That'll be Legends. Like, what? Oh my gosh, I don't understand that.
I understand to a point. So hear me out. So George Lucas never met an idea he didn't say yes to. So you have a couple of the canon books that were canon and now legend, where the timelines overlapped in such a way. If we're at point A on day 1, and on day 3 we're at point D, but it takes 12 days to get there, there's no way both of those can be true. And so I get, from a chronology standpoint, you would have to tweak it, but it wouldn't be that hard to republish those books, change the date to make it work, and still keep the old content like you could have done.
Sure, man.
I get why they had to be selective, but I don't know why you had to completely wipe the map with it, because the content was good. It was just a timeline issue. And it's a lot easier to do now when you have all this high-tech stuff, like where you can track it on the wikis.
Exactly.
And all
just
that.
imagine trying to just make it canon, just, like you said, how you just date and you just find a way to just fit everything like a puzzle pieces, like it could work, and you'd have a rich, as we already have a rich history there, but it's almost like, it feels like, obviously the fandom is divided, right? There's new maybe Star Wars fans that are loving the TV shows, maybe loving Andor, maybe loving the Obi-Wan show. For me, I gave the Obi-Wan show up to the 3rd episode, and I couldn't keep watching it in good conscience. I just couldn't. But again, that's not to say that I hate everything Star Wars. It's just, it has a certain reverence to me, and if I just not seeing the content match that, when I know we're talking about Disney, it's $1 billion juggernaut. They have all the resources to really make it great, and they shouldn't just be phoning it in. And it shouldn't be just quality. It shouldn't be quantity. It should always be quality, and this just bothers me.
Did you watch the Ahsoka series? That had the potential to be so good, and then you watch the fight scenes, and it's almost in slow motion.
Bad. It's so. Here's the thing. I love Ahsoka. I'm gonna put this on record as for one of like favorite Star Wars characters. Clone Wars, I bought into Ahsoka. I loved her character arc. I loved her relationship with Anakin. That was her student. I loved how they grew. I just loved everything about it. And I hated how the Jedi, if you're up to the Clone Wars, that they kind of like throw her away. It's almost like she was accused of like this murder. And it's like they're really gonna throw the book at her. It's like, Jedi, what are you doing? Like, you really gonna do that to her? Like, so I feel her struggle. I feel all of that. Rosario Dawson being cast as her, sure, why not? My problem is, like you said, so it's we see the trailers, we see the overall story, and because I was already fatigued with Star Wars, I was already like I had no hope for it. I was just watching some of the spoilers and seeing some of the choreography, seeing some of Thrawn. Man, if just watch Star Wars Rebels, right? If you read the Timothy Zahn books, like Thrawn is an absolute. He is a master. Okay, he's a tactician. This is what he does. He's a strategist, military strategist. This is who he is, and it's almost like he's not even a shadow of his former self in the Ahsoka show. So, I if I'm missing out and I need to watch the show, let me know right now. But,
yeah, and to do a quick correction, you said that Ahsoka was Anakin's teacher. It's the other way around. Obviously,
no. Yeah, she was a student. Yeah. My bad if I said it wrong. Yeah.
No. When you're talking live, sometimes stuff happens, but we correct it because otherwise you're going to get the comments.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, no,
yeah, Obi-Wan was the one that thought it'd be good for him to have a student. So let's just. Yes, she wasn't teaching him, and I want to say maybe she did teach him some things in their relationship. Not that she was the teacher, but I felt they had a good chemistry, and I love that relationship between them, and it made Anakin more interesting because Anakin in the actual movies, for me, didn't do nothing for me in the prequel trilogy. He didn't. Yeah. In the prequel trilogy, I was all gung ho about Darth Maul, and they killed him off in the first movie. I'm like, what the heck? And then I was happy to find out that in the Clone Wars, they brought him back because, like any good villain, he will come back. So again, just to show you the depth that Star Wars had, and just I'm not seeing it now. So
yeah, there was so much potential that felt like it was wasted.
Oh yeah.
So all right, so we'll move on because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, Chronicles of Narnia.
I will say, I will go with the outside higher or the outside source, or I'll go with maybe a option D. I'll go with Lord of the Rings. I'll just go with that. Yeah, Lord of the Rings, and I didn't read the books. Fault me on that. But the trilogy of movies by Peter Jackson have a special place in my heart because as a kid I always loved fantasy, always loved the idea of fantasy, knights, dragons, demons, orcs, goblins. I as a kid, you see that through children's stories, through even cartoons. But getting that in live action form is everything I wanted. From movies to show you the brilliance in movies and good and evil, and you got your classes, you got your humans, the dwarves, the elves, and the conflicts and the struggle with power and just all that I could resonate with. So for me, Lord of the Rings would be my choice. Game of Thrones is great. I just felt there's a lot of, again, how we didn't like things Star Wars way. Like I think they horribly dropped the ball with the TV show in the last season, and I get when you hear the books are a certain way and it has a certain magic to it, and then you're trying to bring that in a TV show form, which I believe worked for a long time, and then you're moving at such accelerated pace that you're gonna like eclipse the books in terms of just how fast you're moving, so you gotta kind of, the story needs to move a certain way, but they just oh man, it was dog shit that last season. So they're off my list. I put Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the TV show Lord of the Rings, so I mean, if I'm missing something, I wasn't drawn to that because again, I felt the perfection of the Lord of the Rings for me was the actual trilogy. I think if you want to amplify Lord of the Rings, like maybe continue that story, right? And maybe. But keep it true to this. I mean, the source material is only so long, but I would just say have a visionary that respects the source material, kind of like continue the story moving forward in a way in the Lord of the Rings universe that could be interesting. I think that would work as a TV show. I haven't got plugged into the new one. I didn't know what direction they were going. It just was a disconnect with me.
Yeah, so I watched most of the first season of the Rings of Power, and so there's two problems with the series. One, after watching Lord of the Rings and how amazing the costuming and the filmography and the cinematography and the sets were, and then to go to what felt like the high school musical version of that, It was like, no,
Wow.
I can't do it. The
It's that
costuming
bad,
was
huh?
horrible. The acting was bad. The plot was just meh. I didn't really care about it.
So what's the plot there? Is it a prequel to what the main trilogy was, or was it like
So
something
it's
after that?
so they used the Silmarillion, which was his sort of world building book that he had
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately got published, and from there they were telling the story of the creation of the Rings of Power.
Okay.
So the and of those, the ring that my precious got was one of them,
Okay.
and so there was the one ring to rule them all. So it was the
Right.
creation of those rings was the story arc, but
Okay.
just I couldn't get past the visual. It was already hard enough there because again, I saw what they did with the movies in the late
Yeah, they
90s.
set the bar so damn high. If you're gonna go to TV show, you kind of gotta mirror that in some way. And if you're feeling like you're getting this cookie cutter, pasting that's not really reflective of what the show is, then why even bother, man? Time is so precious that I can't watch stuff no matter how much I love a franchise. I'm not just gonna be blindly committed to it when I see the storytelling or when I see like the direction is not hitting, the mark for me.
Yeah, and so that's it for me too, is because um like I said, I only have so much time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just if it's not good, I just don't finish it.
Mm-hmm. It's a
Um,
relationship, man. These are relationships. It's like, you gotta be careful with who you choose to spend your time with, and a TV show is that. And if you're not getting anything out of the relationship but disappointment, right? And it's it's
yeah,
hurting you. Why are you gonna stay in? You like abuse? Get out, man. Look for another friend. Look for another show.
basically that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I've been going back to a lot of the shows from like the late 90s
Mm-hmm.
and the early aughts. I've been watching some of the shows I missed when I was doing the college thing and then the Iraq thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so much good content out there that if they're going to give me trash now, I'll just wait them out.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
all right. So one of the tragedies of adulthood, one of the tragedies of growing up, is they stop asking you what your favorite dinosaur is. So we decided to bring it back. So,
That's funny.
Gilly, what is your favorite dinosaur, sir?
Oh
And
damn.
your kids are listening, so I'm just saying.
I mean, this is tough. I love a T Rex. Who doesn't love a T Rex? But I love the group mentality of the Velociraptors, and I love the intelligence that I've seen in the original Jurassic Park movie. So I'm gonna go with the with the Raptors. That's tough, man. I'll go with the Velociraptors. It's my favorite dinosaur.
Okay, that's one of the things that surprises me is that
Uh huh.
the Jurassic Park, the movie from what was it, the late '90s? I think it came out in
Yeah.
'97. I could be wrong, so don't at me, people. Like I'm just saying, it's
So at Jurassic Park?
yeah, the first one. I'm trying to
The
remember when.
first one, I want to say 93. I think I'm saying that because I remember it was a school trip. And it was like, what, a school trip to go to the movies?
I'm pulling it
And
up
I
on the
saw
Google. You
Jurassic
are
Park in a
absolutely
movie
right.
theater. Was it
It was
93?
93. It was 93.
Awesome, man. Good
But
times.
that movie holds up surprisingly well.
Hell yes, it does.
I've watched it with my
Incredibly well.
kids. It still gives me the chills when he hears the ground thump and the
Oh,
water sort of
yeah.
ripples, and then you look up and you see the dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that
Way
does it.
ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time, that
And
movie.
if you got kids, the Camp Cretaceous, the cartoon version.
Yes. So here's the thing. This is again. I don't want to offend anybody because I just don't. Okay. I'll just preface this that I love the first couple of seasons of Camp Cretaceous because I felt like it did have that Jurassic Park feel and a new story, and I loved it. I got up to I think completely finished season 3, and then before I got to season 4, there was some, I mean, you go online, right? There's so much toxicity online, right? It's an acid pool out there. But I saw an image circulating of Camp Cretaceous. I want to say it was the two girls. They were like kissing each other. And I was like, okay, like I mean, if I watch this with the kids, their kids are still innocent, right? So it was for as a parent because I'm still a dad too. It just raised the flag there. Um, you know. So I think I was in season 4. I haven't seen that season, or if it's in the newer
Season
season
4 is
5.
the last one.
Also, then maybe it was season 4 where that was gonna happen or something. So I didn't. It took me aback. So I'm like, okay, I didn't check it out, but I don't know. It felt. I don't know. It just felt weird because I know the characters, and it just like I don't know. It just seemed just when you saw that image, I'm like, okay. I'm like, you know what? Let me just hold off. The first 3 seasons, though, for me, I loved it. But maybe you could speak to that. Maybe you could let me know.
I didn't think it was that in your face, so it didn't bother me that much.
Okay.
I will say it ended and tied up the Michael Crichton plot where they had the Jurassic Park always stayed on the island, but in the books they actually leave the island. They start swimming away. There's one of the scenes where this family is on a beach in the Caribbean, I think, and suddenly one of those little ankle biters is like biting the baby.
Right. I remember that in part 2. Yeah. Oh, in the book. Yeah. But I remember that in part 2. Yeah.
And so the Camp Cretaceous at the end, they end with the dinosaurs are on like the mainland, and so you're starting to see some of that.
The dinosaurs got to the mainland?
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good way to set it up.
Which links back to the books, because at a certain point in time, they're going to be like, we've tried this theme park how many times and lost how many lives? Like at a certain point in time, like maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
But once the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, you got to kind of deal with that too, unless you're just going to start bombing it from the sky.
There's got to be a way to approach that, and I think that can really work. I know what the newer movies, I think the latest one, Jurassic World or Dominion or something like that, I tried watching the movie and I fell asleep like 2 or 3 times in the beginning. I guess maybe it was too forced. I mean, it wasn't a good transition to make it feel organic enough. It was just like, yeah, they're here on Earth. It's just what it is. And you go to the movie theater and the T-Rexes just jump at you if you're at a drive-in movie theater. It's just what it is. Like, I don't know. It was just wasn't believable enough for me.
Well, so
don't know if you saw that one, but yeah.
I've watched all of them. I own all of them. They tried to recreate what was special about the first one, which was that sense of awe when you first see a dinosaur. But by the I did 5 movies, I think. At a certain point in time, like, okay, it's a dinosaur. We get it. Now what? So I like the second one where they were going in, where like tourists were trying to go in, because rich people with money to burn are going to do stupid stuff. So that was good. Yeah. Sending military people in to try to capture it because it might be useful. Okay, like I bought that.
Yeah.
And seeing people with like machine guns and bazookas and AT-4s or whatever they had, right, against dinosaurs, like I'm here for it. But then it's the same old. And so at a certain point in time, I think you kind of got to move the plot forward, but they just repeated the formula that works.
I didn't feel it too much in the end. Did you see that last one? Did you enjoy it?
I did, but like I said, I'm such a dinosaur nerd that I was there for it regardless. Like my buy-in was pretty much already there.
Okay, I'll try to watch it again. I fell asleep like 2 times going through, but I'll trudge through the third one. Cause I do love dinosaur, like any kind of dinosaur fodder you throw at me. I'm a fan, so I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I think I don't know, if you can't make it, you can't make it through. But I don't know, I enjoyed it. But all right, and last religion question, sir. We've gotten far afield and we've had lots of fun, but we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Coffee or tea? I take neither, man. What does that make me? I'm not a coffee guy. I'm just not. I should be, I guess, as a comic book writer, as someone who works in education and social service work. Maybe I should be sipping a cup of Joe in the morning. I do no coffee, and then tea when I'm sick. Sometimes you need a little tea with citrus and honey. When you're a little under the weather. So I just go. I'm boring, guys. I go with water, H2O, or a glass of milk. Oh man!
There's that old comic or the old commercial where the kid goes into the bar, like the Wild West bar, and he's like, "I'll have a milk."
Yeah.
That is from one of the Chuck Norris movies where the kid was like dreaming that he was with Chuck Norris. I'm trying to blank on that one. Anyway,
wait, just real quick. There's a movie. I don't know. This is perfect '90s movie. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's with Burt Reynolds. And he's got to watch this little kid, 8-year-old kid. It's called Cop and a Half. And I love that movie. But there's this part where he has to, he's doing some kind of undercover thing in a bar, and the little kid, walks up to the bar, a little black kid, and he sits up and he looks all tough and he's like, "Give me a glass of milk." And they all look at him, and then he looks around and he's like, "You see all these badass people, all these intimidating people." He's like, "All right, give me that glass of milk, but in a dirty glass." And I just thought that was so funny. And then once they said that, like, it just set the tone. Like, okay, in a dirty glass, please. Holy cow, this is funny. Funny stuff.
That's Kindergarten Cop is another good one from that era.
Yes.
It's not a tumor. That's Schwarzenegger when he was at his best.
Oh man, I could watch any Schwarzenegger movie. I'll just watch it.
I think it had Danny DeVito. Was it who's the shorter guy that was in it with him? Oh,
there was one with twins where that was supposed to be his twin brother. That's a good. That's some of these they age so well, and some of these I think they were ahead of their time too. That was so good.
Yeah, Kindergarten Cop, and then what was the Twins? Was the other movie?
Mm-hmm. Twins with Danny DeVito, classic stuff.
Yeah, it was Danny DeVito. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Our childhood wasn't that bad.
No, we had the good movies. All right, and so we've talked about like what you like about sci-fi and fantasy, but what was it you found first? Like, what do you remember the one thing that suckered you in the beginning when it comes to sci-fi, fantasy, speculative fiction writ large?
Mm-hmm. I mean, as a kid, it's like a mixture of both. I can't really say which was the one that got me over. I mean, I remember just cartoons, He-Man was it. I remember He-Man. I remember the cartoon. I remember loving the toys. So with that said, I guess I could say fantasy was the first one, and then even He-Man is like kind of a space fantasy at that.
Yeah.
So I guess I got both at once. So I got the hybrid right there. So yeah, and then from there, I remember as a kid too, we had a field trip was to go to a library and pick out books. We would create a library card, and then we'd go pick out books. And I remember taking a bunch of shark books and stuff. But then my mom that weekend, she's like, "Okay, let's look at some books you're gonna get." And it was so crazy. The library she took me to had VHS tapes. So, of course, me being a visual kid, I ran to see these VHS tapes, and the first movie I got was the original Star Wars, the one where Han Solo shot first. And I was suckered in, man. I love the world. I love the world building. I love the escape, and Han Solo for me was cooler than cool. And so, yeah, man, it's just a weird mix. And then from there, then it was fantasy all over again with Lord of the Rings. So I guess you could say it was a mix of space fantasy with He-Man and then space fantasy. I guess you could say sci-fi fantasy. What would you even call Star Wars, right? And then was
space fantasy.
Yeah, right. That's space fantasy, and then from there was fantasy, medieval fantasy with Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
I still haven't gotten over my hatred of He-Man.
Why do you hate He-Man?
He got me in trouble when I was a kid. So back in the day when 900 numbers where you actually had to pay and like they build your phone like it was long distance, right? This is before everyone. Yeah. This is the 90s, or it would have been the late 80s. And so they had this commercial. If you call this 1-900 number, you'll talk to He-Man, but ask your parents first. And of course, everyone calling. If they'd asked their parents, the answer would have been no. So of course, everyone's speaking. Man. And so I stayed home from school. I faked being sick so I could stay home from school, and then I called the 1-800 and 1-900, whatever it was. I called the number to talk to He-Man, and it was a pre-recorded number, and it was basically the equivalent of "drink your Ovaltine, kids." Right?
Wow.
And I'm like, I got in trouble for this. I felt cheated. I felt like, man, He-Man lied to me.
Oh man, forget about it. I would hate.
And then of course I had to mow yards so I could pay my parents back whatever it was for that long distance phone call.
That makes sense, man. I guess if that happened to me, I would be bitter towards He-Man. That sucks.
Trying to explain that to kids who don't understand the concept of long distance phone calls is a little difficult,
they
though.
Don't know. And just to think about, it was a pre-recorded message, right? You're calling to talk to a pre-recorded message. They didn't even have the dignity to put someone impersonating He-Man that can ask you real questions, right? It was all pre-recorded stuff. It's just, oh man, no shame back then either.
Not at all. It was all about the grift. But the 80s was all about mass consumption. So the commercials that came out of that era were on fire.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's some great stuff.
So they set the standard, I think, for modern commercials. So
sure.
What is it about speculative fiction specifically that you like so much?
I mean, fiction in general, it's escapism. You know, I mean, at the same time, who doesn't want to escape? You know, it's escape for me. I don't want to be in the world, but I'm here. You know,
Okay.
so yeah,
So do
anything that
you
can get me to escape. It doesn't even have to make sense, but if I can get immersed into any kind of world where I can connect with others, you know, even if you think about fiction, you think storytelling, like you connect with a character in some kind of a way. It's escaping our problems. It's escaping our day to day, and sometimes we need that. Whether it's through fiction, reading, whether it's through television, watching TV shows, whether it's through video gaming, you know, we all need that healthy just escape.
okay? So how did you go from like loving all of the things to deciding to write your own comics?
I always love storytelling, man. I mean, like we grew up in a childhood with He-Man cartoons, yeah, Ninja Turtle cartoons. You know, you got Star Wars, a galaxy so far away where Darth Vader's just and the Empire wreaking havoc, this force of evil. It's always like this good versus evil. So any kind of story that can resonate with me in some kind of way, I'm for it. And it's to the point where it's like, okay, sometimes you have so many ideas that you love that you kind of want to give back. And who hasn't seen a crappy movie? Who hasn't seen a crappy TV show? Who hasn't seen anything that they didn't like? So for me, it's like there's been times where I love zombies. I love zombie fiction. And sometimes I'd watch so many zombie movies. And then sometimes you watch a zombie movie, you're like, no, I would do this differently. No, but that I don't resonate with that. No, that character that's a dumb decision they're making. That doesn't fall in line with their character. So it's just to the point where it's like, I think I got to start creating my own stories. And I got drawn to comic books because, again, I think if a picture is worth 1,000 words, imagine a comic book with all the different panels. Imagine the story you can tell through comic books because you got art propelling the narrative. They're working together. Don't get me wrong, prose is great too because if you read a great writer, they can easily make you escape because you're reading and your brain is processing those words like a film projector in your mind and you're seeing stuff. So I remember reading a Dean Koontz book. I can't remember. I don't know if it was The Watcher. But I remember like having a nightmare on one of the creatures in the book because the way it just, I don't know, it just stood with me. It's just weird like that. A good writer can do that through prose. So just for me with comic books, it just felt like a good synergy of storytelling with artwork to move a story. And I think it's the age-old storytelling medium for me. I know it's not that old, or maybe the 30s comic books or the 1900s, whatever, but I just feel like it's such a beautiful mix where it has the potential. We're seeing that with manga now. Mangas, are so popular. They're saying that comic books are dead, and now it's about mangas. But it's just like, in general, it's storytelling. That's what I see. So I get been burned so much with stories. It's where it's like, okay, I just got to write my own story. Sometimes you want to write a Star Wars story. I did a little Star Wars fan fiction on about Pong Krell, if he would survive, and him being Darth Krell. So, but again, sometimes it's therapy too. Sometimes you want to write a story because, again, I won't ever write a Star Wars story, but I can write my own stories, and maybe that can get notoriety. And who knows, maybe one day, maybe before I'm turn 80, I can do a Star Wars story. It's just, I believe in the storytelling, and it just helps me cope with life.
Since we could talk, we've been telling stories around the fire. So, like, I don't think stories are going now. The venue is certainly changing. I will say that one of the reasons they say American comics or Western style comics are dead is because they let the stories get stale. They write to formula, or they write with a political message in mind, one side or the other. I think it's a bipartisan problem. Whereas manga so far is just the story. It's like, rule of cool and let's write an adventure. I think the comics that go back to just telling a good story are still doing well. What is the Ripaverse? Like he kept the politics out of it and just told a good story, and he made millions of dollars on it. So I don't think comics are dead. I think political messaging in fiction is dead.
Yeah. I'll say a little something on the Rippaverse. I was actually able to meet Eric July. He was at a MegaCon this year. I actually met him. Great guy, stand-up guy. One thing you got to admire is the fact that what he did was, he was able to. I mean, I think he was a big YouTuber before he was a comic book creator. So he did have an audience, but he knew that there's a lot of this, as you say, like a lot of this, I guess, propaganda or this, political infusion in some of the comic books we know and love. Again, people argue, oh, well, comic books were always political. Well, yeah, that's not the point. The point is that no matter what, it still told a story, right? And the really good stories are the stories that could play that game. I can play the left, right game, middle, whatever game, in and out game, whatever you want, any kind of game, right? Make it about the story, and I can make you think critically because I'm weaving these themes through a story. Okay, I did back the books that he did. I backed all of them. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I like loved his first book. I think it was Isom. I admire what he's doing because he's very successful and he's showing that there's still comic book storytelling that can thrive. Of course, if you don't have a YouTube audience and it doesn't mean just give up. Just know what he's doing is he's just creating stories that are outside of the mainstream that can be successful. So if you're not happy with mainstream, okay, great. But even within mainstream, that's a problem. There's some of these stories that are still good, but that people are already so, I guess, been deceived. So they don't want to go back. Like, look at even me with Star Wars, right? Like, I'm not trusting Disney. Well, what's to say? Maybe Disney throws out like something really good. I mean, we're seeing that with X-Men '97, the cartoon, right? I mean, I've had some people that watch it that said it's great, and then I hear, of course, online that it's not. The views aren't as where it should be. It's not performing as it should. Well, I mean, if the people are upset because of the X amount of stuff you did before, they're probably not going to tune in and support afterwards. So it's all boils down to great storytelling. And even if you do have a message in there you want to tell, just you can't be heavy-handed with it. You have to have your characters. Maybe it's one character leaning more this way, making that argument, and the other character leaning more this way, making that argument, and how the story flows around it and how it breathes. And I think that's a beauty in storytelling. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I think yes, the original was somewhat propagandistic when it comes to the plot, but it didn't intentionally go against the grain of the cultural zeitgeist. So it was very much telling a story to the people as they would receive it. And sometimes it challenged things, but I mean, when you're countercultural just to be countercultural, and there is room in the market for countercultural stories. I absolutely believe that. I mean, if nothing else, they make you think. But if you're propaganda and you're telling people, that's like going into a Christian church and you're telling Christian propaganda. Well, of course they're going to buy it because they believe it. And so I think that's the mistake. The ones that are doing modern propaganda is they're trying to sell people stuff they don't want, and that's the problem. Is you're not serving the audience,
right?
As opposed to it's just it's propaganda,
right? So I'll bring this because you bring a good point, right? Like with the sometimes not forcing it. So like I said, right, and this is again maybe this could be my issue, right? Like we talk about the Camp Cretaceous, right? Like I said, the first 3 seasons it was great. I said I watched the 4th season because that image I saw. Now here's the thing: am I against that? I'm not against that because again, like you can do whatever you want as a person, right? I was against it only from the standpoint where it's like, okay, I see the characters, and from how I got to know the characters, that again, maybe it's the problem of just throwing stuff out there because again, it probably was innocent in its execution. You know what I mean? Because like you said, like it wasn't like that bad, and like maybe it was believable to the characters. Like maybe they did like each other, whatever. Okay, great. I was like, wow, like I'm just hold up, that just hit me out of nowhere, and I was just thinking, are they forcing that? So my fault was I didn't give that 4th season a chance because I saw that image, and again, maybe it still could be great.
It's
There's
also
a
about
yeah.
the audience, because if like I was watching it, my kids were older. We were just watching because it was dinosaurs, and so
Yeah.
it wasn't as big a deal. But I could see if your kids are 4 or 5, maybe they're not old enough for
Yeah,
that.
that's why. Like, if I have, like, again, if my kid's 12 years old, I'm not gonna not watch it with them because they're old enough to, by that time, that 12, 13, however old your kids were. Yeah, my son, he just turned 6, so, him, it's like boy girl, like, that's a thing. So, like, he sees mom and dad kiss all the time. He sees, like, there's stuff that he sees, and then it's just like, if we throw that image right there, it's just like, there has to be an age appropriate thing, and I guess the cartoon was rated, right? Like Y7 maybe, or E. Like, okay, like, so for me, that's just okay. We're going more towards teen heavy. So, in that sense, that's why I just felt the way I did. But not to say it can't work for the story. Again, it has to be believable. It has to be breathable, and it has to be. It can't be too. I can't stand this where they beat you over the head type of storytelling where it's like it's got to be like this, or it's got to be like, it's just, I hate that this narrative, like there was never a strong woman at all. Like, again, go back to Star Wars, look at Leia in the 70s, right? Like, was she your prototypical damsel in distress? No, she pulled a blaster on, she was shooting stormtroopers too. So there's a lot of strong female characters in storytelling. If you look at Sarah Connor, right, from Terminator, she's one of my favorite characters because, dude, in the first movie, she literally kills a damn Terminator. So you can't paint this picture that like women are incapable, or it's just, no, just let the story speak and breathe. And if you have to make that case, through heavy-handed writing or just an agenda-driven push, then I don't want to subscribe to that.
And that's every time they do something and like, this is the first time X has been done before.
Right.
And then you get the old nerds, well, I'll see you that and raise you. And then there's a whole list of every time it's been done before. But it's new to them because they've never seen it, right? Like, so this is the first time I've seen it, which just goes to show that some of the culture, it's just what you're exposed to, not so much what's out there.
Listen, Len, if let's talk about like a hot button issue, right? Like homosexuality, right? Like, that's been around for a long time. Since the Bible days and before, like, it's a thing. It's been around. It's not like this new trend. It's always been around. So I mean, like I said, try to keep certain things away from little kids. Like, it when they get older, people learn, people try, people whatever. Like, it will come to you organically if you let it. I don't feel like it needs this super duper hard push. Just focus on a good story. Could you make a good superhero story and the superhero be gay? Yeah, of course. But you got to focus on his struggle in being a superhero, right? And like, why does he choose that lifestyle, right? Like, that's what makes it interesting. I don't care about who the superhero is sleeping with in his private time. I just want to know what drives him. Why is he a superhero? What makes him want to do it? Why is he sacrificing? Because that's ultimately what it's about. That's what a superhero does. They sacrifice. A lot of the characters we watch or read about in fiction are sometimes they're normal everyday people, but they're put in situations that make them extraordinary through what they do or what they have to overcome, or they're pushed to the certain limit. And sometimes we've never been pushed to that limit the way we see these characters we follow. And these are the choices that we want to see and that make us connect with, these characters.
It's that one, when you're a kid and you watch that 70s show and you relate to the kids. And then as you grow up, Rhett Foreman starts to make a lot more sense to you. It's one of those things where life experience sort of changes your perspective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But
For
all
sure.
right, so we are here to talk about your Kickstarter. So I'm going to show that picture up.
Cool.
And so what can you tell us about the Grom universe specifically?
Yeah, so the Grom universe is, I want to say it's an anthropomorphic universe, but spoiler alert, there is a human there, and humans will be around in some way, shape, or form, but I'm playing this anthropomorphic universe. I'm painting this story that's kind of driven by my nostalgia. Okay, so I grew up on Saturday morning cartoons, I grew up on video games, I even grew up on anime, okay? So me and the creative team, my co-creator Sebastian Navas, we're inspired by doing something that we would love, something inspired by our childhoods, because before that I was working on dark stuff. I was doing Lovecraftian type horror. I was doing like zombie horror, more dark stuff of a vendetta western. So it's like, you know what, let's go into just doing something fun. And I thought about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I talked with Sebastian. He's like, yeah, anthropomorphic could be really cool. He's like, let's do capybaras. At the time, I didn't know what the hell a capybara was. And he sold me on this. He said, they're the most chill animal in the universe. He said, they even get along with crocodiles. I said, stop it, you're shitting me. And he's like, Google it. And I Googled it. And I found so many images that weren't doctored of capybaras and crocodiles just hanging out. And if a crocodile is not trying to eat a big fat rat that's the size of a dog, then that animal must be super cool to me. And I had all the ammunition I needed, all the fuel to create Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. And it's basically an anthropomorphic universe that's driven by our childhood nostalgia, Saturday morning cartoons, good versus evil, definitely Star Wars inspired there. So it's just a story that I would love to read that I'm writing.
So are you the artist or are you the storyteller on this project?
No, man, I wasn't gifted with a brilliant artistic gene in the sense of drawing or illustration. I wish I was, because if I was, I believe 100% I'd be already working Marvel or DC or doing my own thing like a Todd McFarlane. So unfortunately, I'm just the writer, but I'm blessed to have a great team with us. I got Sebastian Navas, who does the illustration for the first 4 issues of Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, the universe we pretty much created, that's centered around capybara siblings that are bounty hunters, and they have a gunslinger gecko father, and an interstellar bounty is suddenly placed on their heads by the Space Police Authority and Command Enterprises. Yes, I have my own version of the Empire. It's a military, the space military, a galactic military that supposedly is all about peace around the galaxy. And of course, there's going to be corruption there, and they put a bounty on our capybaras. So that's where the Galactic Rodent universe jumps off. The first 4 issues there is centered around how they deal with that bounty being put on their heads, and then it trickles into a spin-off. So the spin-off that I got now showing here, Duo the Yunkai Warrior. Duo is a tribal frog who his whole tribe was wiped out by the Space Police Authority and Command Enterprises. They were stationed in his planet, and his people wanted to make peace. He didn't think that was a good idea, and sure enough, his poor clan gets wiped out, and he looks deeper in to see that the Space Police Authority, Command Enterprises, that the galactic military are in cahoots with the biggest black market ring in the galaxy, Shadowgate, and that's where he goes on his adventure for revenge, and he will eventually cross over with the Galactic Rodents of Mayhem in issue number 6, is where I have them actually, he'll kind of like be on a team, so to speak. And that's what I'm just having fun with this universe, bringing it to life. So we got Mecha Sharks, we got Sniper Vipers, we have Dark Raider, who's a very, very evil, sinister general, and we're just painting our universe.
Okay. So what can you tell us about the main characters of this standalone sort of sequel to the universe?
Right, so Duo the Yunkai Warrior focuses on Duo and his revenge story. Basically, he's on this path of vengeance to seek redemption on his fallen clan, and he ends up on, you could say the crosshairs, or he ends up in like that face to face with the vile, hubristic leader duck of Shadowgate. So it's basically it's more dark. I don't know why it's this one is pretty dark. It's so dark that I have a buddy of mine who absolutely loved Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, but he didn't like the violence and he didn't like the tone of this spinoff. So this might not be for everyone, but if you do like a dark tale that won't hold no punches and centered around anthropomorphic characters set in deep, deep space in the faraway galaxy, you'll feel right at home with Duel of the Yokai Warrior. If you like Star Wars, if you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, if you like anime, if you like Cowboy Bebop, you'll definitely find a lot to love with the universe I'm doing here with Grom.
So, given that you said it's dark, what would the age range of audience be? Like, what would you rate it on a movie scale?
So for duo, I mean, it would probably have to be maybe 15 and up, even 14 and up could work. Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, I would say, is 13 and up. So with this campaign, if you missed out on Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, you could still catch up and get Galactic Rodents of Mayhem issues 1 through 4, along with Duo. If you're only interested in Duo, you could just get Duo standalone story. But Duo, his character, he's kind of like, he's a very conflicted character because, again, he lost his family in a very vicious way. It's pretty gruesome. It's tough. It's very tough. But again, I want to play with power here, the power dynamics, right? Because again, if you think about the Empire, or if you think about the Galactic Police in my story called Space, the Space Police Authority and Command Enterprises, they're to protect, right? They're to uphold the peace. But you have this little platoon here that was sent on its planet on some other mission, and the power gets in the way, right? And this is where they kind of eliminate his clan, and he's left alone, and he's just hungry for revenge, So it's kind of like, what happens when you're just all alone and filled with rage? Can you make it? Can you get that revenge that you so seek? Can you make friends along the way? He does come across with another character there who we call Starhawk, who could be a friend or an adversary. But so it's just having fun with that universe and telling stories that are thought-provoking and that take risks. But I feel there's a reward there, and I also feel that there's also a message. I always like to put some kind of hopeful message in the story, even though I'm hitting it really hard or going with a dark approach.
So, would you say this is grimdark or no?
Grimdark?
Yeah, the where it's just kind of a hopeless setting.
No, I wouldn't say hopeless. No, I wouldn't say hopeless. No, there's always hope, man. I like to make sure there's a window of hope, a sliver of it, and that sliver is a nice size, because I don't want readers just to feel like there is no hope. I like to do my stories kind of like how life could be at times. Like, it can get really hard. It can really push us over the edge. And if we stay with it, if we can't do it, we'll find people that can help us. We can find people that can shoulder us along the way. Because I personally don't think we can do anything on our own. And even my characters I create like maybe supporting characters that can help them or that can push them. I just kind of like want that in my writing, and I think it reflects life, because no matter how tough things can get, adversity, whatever, like, I believe there will always be some type of hope.
So the difference between grimdark and just a dark setting. So I wouldn't say that Batman was grimdark because there's hope, right? Like Batman.
Yeah, for sure.
In grimdark, there is no hope, and the difference would be like, you can have a dark setting, but you want to know there's a light at the end of the tunnel that isn't the train coming to run you over, right?
No, yeah. So there's light. I got a little bit of light here. There's flickers of light in my tunnel. There's no, no grimdark. Grimdark's interesting to me, though. I feel like maybe as a writer, I may want a challenge to write something like that, but it'd be going against what I like to sell with my writing. So I always like to. I don't care how bleak a situation is and how we view stuff. I like to believe there's always some hope.
Yeah, I prefer that as well. So, you've talked about your main character, which is the guy on his redemption arc seeking vengeance. What about the secondary characters? Are there any other non-main characters that you liked a lot?
In our duo spinoff, I have one character, or you mean the Galactic Rodents of Mayhem?
With the duo spinoff that they're going to buy if they back this Kickstarter.
Yeah. So with the duo spinoff, there's a character called Starhawk. He's one of the space soldiers, and he wasn't in on killing the tribe, and because he didn't follow orders, he was jailed. So Duo, on his revenge path and wiping out all the soldiers, finds him locked up, and he helps him to get closer to the villain called Skag Vifler, the head of Shadowgate. He has information. He has where they can get more information on where to locate him. And he's a great secondary character because he's actually the moral compass, I want to say. Because Duo is, you can say Duo is in Punisher mode right now. He just wants to wipe out all the bad guys. He thinks that's where he's at. And Starhawk's like, hey, buddy, we might have some leverage in not trying to kill all the bad guys. Maybe if we could just, still bring some justice, not through murder. So I think they do have an interesting dynamic, and Starhawk is an interesting secondary character that will come help Duo on his path. So I see him as that moral compass.
Do you think he'll get his own spin-off book as well at some point?
So hopefully, what I do have in mind, if we're able to fund this, the artwork to the 60 pages is already done. So let's just say we still have 14 ways to go. We're in that murky midway point. So we're kind of creeping up. We're about 48%. So if we're able to fund this out, the idea is to have Duo and Starhawk be like the second version of the Duo spin-off. So it would be Starhawk being included with Duo, like a kind of a buddy cop sci-fi tale, if you will. And then maybe if that does well, we would definitely see Starhawk as the main character with Galactic Order. So Mayhem helping out in some way, shape, or form. He's already in the universe, but we can definitely consider doing a Starhawk spin-off.
Okay. If this was going to be made into a, some sort of cartoon animated adventure, do you have in your head who would voice your rodent?
Man, that's a good question, because again, in the fantasy world, if I had all the major players I wanted, it would be great. I mean, it would be great. I don't have a this is probably not a popular choice. I like John Cena's voice for some reason. I don't even know if you know who John Cena is.
I do, the wrestler, yeah.
Yeah, I think John Cena would be good for like our Bash. Bash is our he's kind of like our very hot-headed capybara. Then we have Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa, maybe she's kind of she could work in so many different ways. She's our brains of the operation, but she's also has no problem in getting her hands dirty and punching a couple dudes if she has to. So she could also be hot-headed at the right time. Then we have Ripple, who's our pilot. He's just he's just like the easy rider, man. He's just low-key, cool, calm, never loses his cool older brother. So it's hard off the top of my head to say who would I have for each one. I don't know why I like wrestlers though. I think Booker T would be a good Ripple voice. And for Mona Lisa, I don't know who I'd go with for Mona Lisa. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. But yeah, man, it'd be cool to see it as animation. I think they're toyetic. If you see the illustrations and stuff, as figures they work. And they definitely work as a video game franchise, as an animation. It works. It definitely works. And hopefully we can get there one day.
So if you're going to do video games, you're going to go with the retro look, like the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or are you going to go full immersion to the new stuff?
So here's the thing. If again, because this probably ain't going to be AAA stuff right here. It'd probably be a little bit more low budget. I would have to go the retro TMNT Shredder's Revenge with a twist of, I don't know if any of our arcade players here remember Alien versus Predator. It was an arcade game that, in the 90s, whatever, and that by Capcom, where it was a beat 'em up, but they had segments, man, where you picked up a rifle and the aliens were just coming at you a mile a minute, and there was some shoot 'em up aspects to it too. So I would love a nice fusion of beat 'em up with some shoot 'em up. All for Grom. Yeah.
Now, so you mentioned the shoot 'em up. So what kind of tech is available in this universe that they're using?
So it's very what kind of tech? There's inspiration here from Mass Effect. There's inspiration here from Macross, the anime. You have your ships. I haven't gone crazy yet with like mechs and stuff because again I'm just building up the world, but those ideas are definitely in play, like mecha elements. I'm not gonna say we have lightsabers, but one of the main characters, Ripple, he has what I like to call a digiblade, and it's like this glove he has, but like a big energy sword, kind of like just pops out. So yeah, and then you got your plasma guns. You got it's typical like sci-fi, but I'm contemplating because the world is still developing. If I want to maybe get into like a space fantasy in terms of like He-Man, where you kind of have some sort of mysticism mixed in there. So we're still in our infancy, but you'll see a lot of the first 4 issues of Grom is very action packed. So you'll definitely see a lot of the type of stuff you would see in maybe like blaster stuff, Star Wars, big guns, like what do you say? Like I want to say Mexican standoff, but with ships. So we have once you read the book, you see the artwork. We're playing with a lot of firepower here.
Okay, so obviously Space Enterprise, the Space Police group, is the bad guy. Is there any individual character in the space group that is the bad guy that you can tell us about without spoilers?
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot as we develop the world. We're gonna get more into the hierarchy. So basically, if you see the first 4 issues, you basically see one general, who's called Dark Raider. He has a bear mask, a skull, a bear skull as a mask. He's hooded, very evil, sinister. You're kind of wondering what's going on, but there's a reason behind why he's trying to go after the Galactic Rodents of Mayhem, tied into their past. And so we hint a lot at him. And when we go into issue 5 and 6, when we're able to develop and build our world, you're going to see more of the hierarchy. You will see the Madam President, if you will, who runs space. You will see some of the other generals that pretty much are in cahoots with this Madam President that kind of dictate how the galaxy will be governed. So yeah, in our story, we are not short of villains. Although Dark Raider is a space general, he doesn't dress like a space general. He employs bounty hunters. He has sniper vipers that are with him, literally twin vipers that I love. Some of my favorite characters. He also has a mecha shark that's pretty much his right hand go-to guy. So you will not be short of villains in our story arcs, and we even have anthropomorphic. I don't want to say Ninja Turtles. We'll just call them Turtle Ninjas as my little homage, to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we actually do have our 4 turtles that they're called the Shinobi Turtles of Doom. And who knows, maybe if Grom really pops off, they will definitely get their own spinoff. But yeah, so now it's just world building and just trying to get the story out there as much as possible, just because it's hard. Comic books are extremely niche. It's niche, man. It's so niche, and it's hard just to get exposure because the big players are Marvel, DC, and everything is centers around the big 2. So if you're a little guy doing your stuff, you can shout about it, but ain't no one really hearing you. And even if you shout about it on Twitter or on social media, it's very hard to penetrate. It's like I'm in this vacuum, this void, and it's very hard to get out of that vacuum. Because again, basically it's just a competition with your Disney, with your Marvel. So I'm just trying to see if we can just get some type of footing, some steady fan base behind, to show that through crowdfunding, we could do comic books, we could do action figures. I was part of a big toy crowdfunding campaign that just successfully crowdfunded this past April called Flip Or. And it's Motu inspired, Masters of the Universe inspired, and I was helping them. I'm part of that team. They were able to crowdfund $200,000 in bringing that toy to life. So I got connections with toy makers and stuff. So it's all, you need the backing, you need the support, you need to show that, okay, if we got this much people behind it, we could execute through crowdfunding in different ways. So I'm just doing the grassroots approach, trying to just grind in the trenches to hopefully see if we could build something out of the Galactic Rodents of Mayhem universe.
Man, so are you going to go with like providing STL files for people to print their own, or are you going to go traditional, production for those toys?
If we get to the point where I will do a crowdfunding for toys, I think I would like it to be kind of traditional where we have a like we could say like a producer or like the toy maker that we are using for our Flipboard toy would like to have him in charge of distributing like Grom toys. And we have an artist who sculpted that Flipboard toy. I would love to have him. He's a genius. That dude is a mastermind. I would love to have him sculpt the figures and see if we could get something out there like in 2-packs or something and see if it could happen. Because like I said, figures are extremely toyetic, and once you have a good story, it just makes you want to play with the toys even more. So we're good on the story. We have that. It's just a matter of getting awareness, so that way we can have an audience big enough to where we could crowdfund, toys or maybe even a video game. Kickstarter's been doing a lot of stuff, so maybe even a pilot to pitch an animation, right? So maybe hiring to do the pilot, a 20-minute episode to finance the art team to bring that up, the production studio to animate it, and then pitch it to bigger, so the possibilities are there. But, you got to take it day by day and just build the army. And if we can get a Mayhem army behind us, then yeah, man, those are all possibilities.
Okay. So speaking of characters, we're going to ask the old question. So if these capybara that you tormented with their clan dying, if they met you in a dark alley and they knew that you were Gilly, who wrote the comics, who wrote the creator of their world, the tormentor of them, their deity who screwed them, how do you think that interaction is going to play out?
You really want me like under pressure here. I don't know. I mean, it would. I want to believe in my characters. I believe that I do everything for a reason, and it's for their betterment. And sometimes we have to go through a little bit of hell before we can taste the slice of heaven. So I do believe they wouldn't gut me and leave me out to bleed out in an alley. I believe that they would trust my judgment and be happy to meet me.
So I guess it really comes down to when in the story arc they find you.
Oh man, I would like to say like as late as possible, when they're really on their last legs, really thinking there's no hope left, and it all comes together and there is hope.
Okay, so let's move on to the Kickstarter. So obviously we've talked about the story a lot, which is important to make people want to back the Kickstarter. But why do they get with the Kickstarter? Is it just they're buying the comics and they're pre-funding it? Are there any perks? Like, what are the levels and what are the tiers and how's that working?
Yeah, so right now we're just try to keep it simple, as basic as possible. You can get the first 4 issues of Galactic Wars of Mayhem along with the Duo Yunkai Warrior spinoff, and then we all do have some add-ons, some T-shirts you can get. There's some digital comics bundles where you can get some of the other horror stories that I've done. You can get some digital stuff of I did a paradimensional demon horror story that I've done. So I got some other bundles that you can get that you can add on, and then just some T-shirts. We got a Grom Universe T-shirt, and then a Duo Yunkai Warrior. I think if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll just see like the T-shirts that we're offering. But just keeping it simple for now.
Okay. So at some point in time, maybe there'll be more options.
Yeah, I mean, the options I really want to offer is action figures. Yeah. That's like what I love, and I've had with the success of Galactic Wars of Mayhem, because I was able to fund that on Indiegogo, and then I did what's called Creators Cut versions that I did on Kickstarter, where it came with bonus materials, some behind-the-scenes stuff, and even some Q&As. And then the Q&As, I've had quite a people asking, hey, when are the action figures coming out? Hey. So it's like, it's cool that you guys are gung-ho about action figures. I just need about maybe a few hundred more people gung-ho about action figures, and then we can talk about maybe try to crowdfund it. So that would be my major offering, would be to offer action figures with the comics. Because, I mean, sometimes you could do a pin here, you can do a sticker here. It's all cool, but, I mean, I want to offer some real good stuff. So hopefully we can get to that.
Okay. So you said the comics already sold. So presumably, if they watch this episode after the Kickstarter is funded, because I'm going to put that out in the universe, is it going to be for sale on your website too? If they catch this episode a year from now, 2 years from now?
If they cap this episode a year or 2 years from now, please check me out at GillyWritesComics.com. Definitely consider following my stuff, because if you follow me on Twitter, on social media, I'm always posting what I'm doing. So outside of the Grom universe, I'm also dabbling in superheroes. So I will have my own superhero universe that I'm working on. I've been doing comics for almost 10 years, and I never did superheroes. But I love superheroes, so it's just a matter of time to just jump in. So I will have a lot of stuff going on. So just definitely follow me so you can be up to date. So I don't know what I'll have on my website at the time, but through crowdfunding, I always give people the opportunity to get my stuff. Like for this campaign right now, it's a spin-off duo focused on our tribal ninja frog duo, but at the same time, I'm making our original flagship Galactic Rodents of Mayhem issues available as well. So I will always do that.
So, given everything you've created in the Grom universe world, would you live there if you could?
I don't know if I want to be surrounded by anthropomorphic animals. It sounds cool, but in my universe, a lot of them have attitude. A lot of them don't take shit from anyone, and a lot of them haven't been exposed to humans yet, and when they do, I don't think that's going to be good. So it's kind of like a yes or no. I mean, it would be cool, but again, it's a lot of craziness and mayhem in this world, so I don't know, man. As long as if I'm with my Galactic Rodents of Mayhem and duos around, I think I'll be okay. So in that case, I wouldn't mind. Hell yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. So obviously this interview is winding down. We've kind of talked about the Kickstarter. We've talked about the characters. Is there anything we didn't talk about you think the audience needs to know?
No, man, just support indie comics, support indie projects. Thank you for listening. Just, do your part, because people say comic books are dead. And if that's true, then I'm wasting my time. A lot of other people are wasting their time. We want to entertain you. We really want to entertain you. We want to tell good stories. And we want to make some good connections. I want to get to the point where I can go to a convention and a lot of people want to talk to me because they resonated with my work. And all I want to do is make people smile and make people happy, even though I'll write some tough stuff and make some decisions and make things hurt. I think sometimes we need that as humans to build character and to keep moving on and trucking when things go tough. So with that said, man, if you guys like what you hear, consider backing my work. Consider supporting the artisan indie projects if you can. There's a lot of people with a lot of good stuff out there that can't compete with mainstream, but are still trying the best they know how. So if you can support in any kind of way, that's amazing, because you guys make us want to keep on going.
If you've ever told yourself, I don't like the political messaging left, right, or center in the comics and the books that I read, I want just a good story. Even if you don't read comics, buy it for your friend, because that content doesn't exist because people don't support it. They don't put their money where their mouth is. So this is your chance to do just that and buy this comic book. So
cool.
All right, this is the part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part, people. Now, where all can they review your book? Because generally speaking, people go to Goodreads, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. They leave reviews there. I don't know where people go to leave reviews on comic books.
Yeah, there's no way you can leave a review on my comic books, but if you go to my website, it'll be in the link with this video, I believe, GillyWritesComics.com. You will be able to read the first issue of Galactic Rodents of Mayhem #1 totally for free, so you can just dip your toes, see if you want to get invested in our little comic book universe. And if you did happen to like it, tweet me at Gilbert Del Trez. And just say, hey, saw your stuff, I thought it was great. That works for me. And then from there, circulate it through Twitter, through retweeting, and that means a lot. In time, I'll have an Amazon page where you can leave all the nasty reviews you want.
So that's the trick, people. You got to start your own podcast or your own website and then do reviews there. so that way you can shout into the ethos to all 12 people that are listening.
There you go.
Right. That's why we started our podcast, because we had things to say and we didn't care if anyone listened.
There you go, man. That's it.
All right, so Gilly, we'll have all your links in the show notes, but where can people find you on the internet if they want to track you down?
Yeah, man. If you want to track me down on Twitter, I'm at Gilbert Deltrez, Deltrez. You look that up. On Instagram, I'm at Gilly Writes Comics, Gilly _writes_comics. And, follow me, at me, tag me on Twitter or on Instagram, and, send a shout. And I do have a YouTube channel. That's another thing. I think it's at Gilly Writes Comics as well, or Underground Gilly. So search me up on YouTube. I think they'll put the link there as well. So, yeah, man, it's very easy to find me.
All right. And you can find us on our Linktree, linktr.e, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com, for professional purposes only, people. We have our Facebook group and Facebook page. And most importantly, we have Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitters, and emails. And she does run the TikToks. If you're talking to them on the TikTok, you're talking to Stabby. We have our Linktree, our Spotify link also in the Linktree, where you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on, or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink all of the coffee brand coffee there is, and if you want to drink some of it too, links in the show note. Code is Podcast Grunts, and you get 10% off, and we get a little bit of a kickback, so you too can help keep the lights on, one cup of Java at a time. With that being said, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, Gilly. This was a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, man. Hopefully we could do a panel or something down the future. I appreciate it. And it was great. Blasters and Blades. Thank you so much, guys.
It was a lot of fun, and we'll have to have you back. And I'll have to put you in touch with Nick. You can get nerdy with him about comics. And with that, we're out. Boom. Wait for it.